You're live.
We're live. live everywhere. I got one more coming up. There it is.
We go.
It wants to customize our dashboard. Got it. Thanks.
Got it. Thanks, Mark.
So that's a no-go. Well, welcome everybody to Monday Night Live.
Yes, the best night of the week.
Absolutely.
And welcome to March. Sorry. I'm so excited.
You go.
I'm just so excited for spring. With the lovely Dean Nixon.
And Kate Simmons.
And I'm Kate Simmons.
From TurningLeaf Health and Wellness in sunny St. George, Utah. We are so excited to be joining you once again tonight to be able to talk through our topics that are beneficial and self-help driven and based upon our experience as experienced life coaches and providers of information to help people really progress in life.
Yeah. And speaking of progressing in life, can we just give a shout out to all of our recent level 4 empowerment seminar graduates?
Yeah.
Yes. So it was so incredibly marvelous to spend the weekend with these beautiful, beautiful individuals who made it all the way through all 4 levels.
They did. They made it all the way through, and a lot of them together, which is kind of a significant thing. So next week, or actually this weekend, we have level 2 seminar coming up, which is super exciting. And it's such a beneficial thing to be able to start the seminar process. So level 1, we call awakening. Level 2 is discernment. Level 3 is empowerment, balance. And level 4 is empowerment.
Right.
So to be able to make through all 4 of those seminars, and especially if you can do it in a year's time, is pretty powerful.
It's super powerful.
So very excited for that group. They did such a great job this weekend, worked really, really hard, and just really digested the content.
It was just so much fun and so incredible to watch. The other thing that I find just so completely fascinating about going through the seminar process is everybody kind of comes away with like their favorite a little bit.
Yes.
Right. And it's, if you hang around me at all,
keep going. I'm just going to adjust this.
Okay. Yeah. Level 2 is just my favorite. I love it. I love everything about it. What it gave to me in my life is, there are no words oftentimes to describe it. And I really like 3 and 4. They have some more like really applicable in life tools to like go out and like just kind of keep moving your feet forward, which is super cool. But I like level 2 being my favorite. It's always so fun when people have level 4 be their favorite. Yeah. Which was my mother, by the way. She went through this last weekend and she's like, oh my gosh, if I wouldn't have done level 4, like, cause it was kind of the sweet spot for her.
Yep.
And I think that's just so like, just another testament to how amazing it is that we're also just different and yet the same.
And everybody needs something different.
Exactly.
And everybody's stepping into that room in either in the awakening seminar, the discernment seminar, the balance or the empowerment. Every single one of those, you're going to get exactly what it is that you specifically need. Yeah. So it was very cool.
Just so cool.
Well, tonight's topic.
Yes, let's talk about it.
So tonight's topic was one that has really been coming up a lot recently. And I think as I reflect on why, and it's coming up a lot in not only in my individual coaching sessions, and I know you echoed it when we were talking about, tonight.
Yes.
But also in the seminar process and through the workshops. And I believe it's happening. The reason that this topic is coming up is because a lot of people that are really starting to work on themselves. I think I really believe that this issue that we've had, especially with the social dynamics that have changed, the COVID and all of the isolation, and it really has forced us kind of into that better yourself place where you really have to become a lot more introspective and really start to look. Well, the topic is generational issues or generational strategies, generational thoughts, behaviors, patterns, all of these different things. And a lot of times what I find is people want to understand why they do what they do. And that can be a very, very healthy thing. And a lot of times we're talking about it in our work, and especially in the seminar process, we're talking about how important it is to really understand and pay attention to why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes.
But sometimes people want to understand why they're doing what they're doing and where it came from.
Yeah.
Like, why do I do what I do? Where did I pick up this attributes? Where did I pick up this behavior or this pattern, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes the places that we can go look for that are in our generational past, right? Like it warms my heart, and it completely blows my mind how connected we are to the ones that came before us and the ones that are to come after us already in every moment, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think when I learned that when you are like just growing in your mom's tummy, right? That there are how many different generations that are in that like specific moment to help create the fetus and the baby. It's like your great-great-grandmother is like in that. Okay, wait, I'm messing it up. It's like when I know you're like trying to follow me.
I'm
sorry.
trying to get on board. While you do that, I'm going to adjust this Instagram
it's
one more
backwards.
time, so.
It's like when your grandmother is in the like forming in the womb, your essence is already there.
Okay.
Like your essence is already there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
And so you can like pump that forward as well as pumping it back in that space, which is just incredible that like because that baby is going to grow up and have another baby, which is going to have you.
Okay.
Right? Like, so you're already in that space and in that place. And so when we go after generational patterns or generational beliefs or generational anything that we're getting, genetics and health and all the things that come through our line, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, all of it. It's just so completely fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, and I do think I keep adjusting.
Did I make any sense? Did that make any sense?
You did make sense. It was
I
a little bit.
got there
I keep adjusting. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You did make sense, and I get where you're coming from in the sense that in our DNA there is a lot of behaviors, and we're seeing that's coming out on a scientific level, that there is a lot of pattern behaviors that come through the DNA programming that we have. So we can see shifts and changes even just in children in a time span. So you can have a parent that will have a child at the end of the 90s, a couple children at the end of the 90s, and then children on into the 2000s. And there's a difference in them due to what's going on in the parent's DNA, their thinking, their process. So if that is true, what you're saying is leap even farther with us and understand that there can be even more generational stuff that we may not even be aware of.
Absolutely.
Which is just super intriguing to me because there are things that my grandfather did. And
maybe he still does.
He could.
Still be
he's not here physically, but he may be still doing those things. But I do know that there are things that my mother's father, there were behaviors and mannerisms that I saw him do, like as he was older, and I saw him do these types of things. I always thought they were peculiar little traits, but every once in a while I find myself doing them, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like that is not something that I patterned after him. It was actually it's got to be something that's wired within me. So we do know that there's that generational. I believe that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, just that like our essence is already there. So as your grandparents are growing, like your essence is already within them, right? And so there's pieces of them that are very much in you, even if you never ever met them, right? And we can just keep going back and back and back, and there's like so much real beauty in that. And then there's the other piece of it which is what we want to talk about tonight, where we can start to like really blame and get into like that kind of like, oh gosh, there's no way out of this. This is huge generational family pattern that I have. And in some of our families, I would dare to say in most families that there's some toxic stuff that just keeps moving forward from generation to generation, or unhealthy behaviors or theologies or ideas or belief systems that really aren't very healthy and don't really work, especially as we grow in our evolution as a species. Right?
Yes. And I think there's a couple pieces that we want to look at as we do this, pull this apart. One of the things I agree with you 100% is we tend to look back to blame rather than look back to understand. And this is my understanding. This is what I've come to understand just from my own work, my work with other humans in our work. I don't know. Trying to find some way to say in this lifetime. The reality in this is recognizing that we can't judge people's behavior from looking backwards. It's not healthy and it's not fair.
Absolutely.
And to be able to judge people for their decision-making processes, for their choices, and for those things, it's not fair. So for example, when we look at ourselves, when I look at my younger self, oh my gosh, like I was a hot mess. I was a train wreck. There were a lot of things choices that I made that really.
I want to share one, but I'm not going to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you holding
the one
back.
That I discovered over the weekend.
No, we're not going to talk about it. I don't know when that was, but we're not going to talk about it. So I don't know what it is. But the point being is that the decisions I made when I was even, let's say, 25 years old, I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the information. I didn't have the resources that I do now. I didn't have access to all the things that I do today as far as tools and knowledge and information. We didn't have all of this stuff. So I was making decisions, and the best decisions I could make based upon the information that was in front of me at the time. And my good partner, business partner, who's no longer with us, Dr. Moody, that was always his big mantra. And I remember the first time he shared that with me, probably about 20 plus years ago, is he kept saying, Dean, you can't be so hard on yourself because you were making decisions based upon what you knew then.
Yeah.
It's easy to look back at yourself now and criticize and judge and ridicule, but it's not fair. It's not equitable. And that was a really powerful moment. And I think when we look at our generational work, when we look at our patterns of behaviors, our philosophies, our theologies, and the things that we see, it's easy for us to look back with disdain.
Yeah.
I remember just recently I saw a post, from a individual who had a lot of anger towards what was, going on in the past. And all of their posts were all about anger at individuals from a certain time frame and a certain time period. And it was about how they're bad people and they were wrong people, and really pigeonholing and directing a lot of anger. This is why we don't want to do this, is because the more I blame, the more I'm connected to it.
Yeah.
So the more that individual gets angry at those individuals or those types of individuals, air quotes, types of individuals, the more we're bound to them for the rest of our lives. We're going to be bound to them because we blame them. But if we look back and we understand, and we look back with gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, understanding, and that's the thing. I don't have to tolerate it. I don't have to say, I condone the behavior. Let me rephrase that. We do need to tolerate it, but just because I'm tolerating doesn't mean I condone. Right. I don't have to condone their behavior. I don't approve of their behavior. I don't approve of the way they handle things. I don't approve of it. However, I can tolerate it and be compassionate and recognize they were making decisions from the information that they had, albeit it may have been unhealthy.
Absolutely.
So when we do our generational work, that's the point I'm making, is really look back at individuals to understand, but not to blame and not to point fingers at it.
Yeah, I love that 100%. And I loved when you were talking about like looking at your past self, right? And the experience, Doc's perspective and all of those things. Because I would just add that it's not only just like where you were at mentally and what you knew, but also where you were at with your emotional capacity and your emotional intelligence, and where you were at spiritually and physically, and like everything that makes us coming together in that moment. Because that's truly one of my philosophies as well, is that I believe that most people really are just trying to do the very best that they can in every moment that they have.
Amen.
Right. And so
Yep.
when we, once again, leaning into this idea of looking in the past to try to like pinpoint where the problem was, right? And we're always trying to preach and teach like people are problems. So guess what? Your great grandfather is not the problem.
Right.
He's not a problem.
Right.
Or go back farther, or even just right to your immediate place with your mom and dad, or wherever that fits in for you, where you're feeling like, oh man, this is kind of where the problem is. People aren't problems.
Right.
So exactly like you're saying, looking back in an attempt to understand and to once again help me figure out me, help me be able to come to a resolution with this and be able to make something healthy and working that I can now move forward in my life, instead of looking back to be like, the first thing that comes in my mind is I have a really, really great skill of perspiration. If I'm working out, if I'm like getting it, then it floors me with people that don't sweat, and I know that that's kind of a healthy thing. However, it's also not very oftentimes comfortable or like when we go to dance parties and stuff, like if I'm on the dance floor, my hair's got to be back because I'm like in it mile 15 in a marathon sweating, right? Like that's just how it goes. And my I've got family members on my mother's side of the family that I always love to just kind of like, yeah, thanks Grandpa Ferd, like just kind of like blame it on in like a funny way. But we do that a lot.
Yes.
Especially with the things that we're taught as we grow and maybe outgrow some of the things that we learned when we were little and find out that they may not be as accurate, as true as we once thought that they were.
Right.
And so it's really easy to look back and blame when really you weren't there. Most likely you weren't there in their space. You weren't there in their body and what was going on in their head and their heart and everything that was happening for that decision to happen and that those traditions and those patterns to start to be formed and put into place.
Right.
So you don't have all the story.
And so a lot of times when we're looking back, we're trying to understand what to do with the anger.
Yes.
And that's usually why people, why we want to shift to blame, is because blame in a lot of ways gives us permission to be angry. And that's not necessarily true. You can still be angry without having to blame.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are trying to understand. We don't, and again, I want to get back to that piece, is that just because you're understanding doesn't mean that you're condoning. It doesn't mean that you're giving people a free pass for poor decisions, or a free pass for hurtful things, or a free pass for mistakes that they've made. However, just because you're understanding it what it does give you the ability, when you look back with that compassion and that understanding,
Mm-hmm.
is it gives you the ability to look beyond the anger. And this is the part where the heavy lifting is.
Mm.
The heavy lifting is really, it's like, okay, I get you're angry, and be angry.
Absolutely.
But once you let go of the blame and let go of that piece, then you can get underneath. Because the real work is underneath. The real work is really when you start getting underneath and understanding why you're angry, understanding the hurt, the pain, the disappointment, the betrayal, or whatever the feelings are that it gives you permission to start to work through.
Yes.
But if you're staying on the surface of these people are bad, these people are wrong, they're the problem, they're to blame, and if you stay in that space too long, then you will constantly be circling in that cycle of anger, blame, instead of understanding. I always love how Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And really what that principle is all about is really understand first, not condone always, but to understand. Once you understand, then you can be understood, because you can understand yourself better.
Yes.
Once you can understand yourself better, then you can start to move through things. But that's the problem. The challenge I see is I see people struggling so much with hanging on to anger and hanging on to all of these other things,
instead of helping move through to some form of understanding and ability to recognize that you don't have to buy into that anymore, right?
Correct.
Like you were talking about with that individual about social media, right? Like, we don't buy into that kind of ideas and behavior anymore. So helping to heal that and then move away and forward without being so tethered to it.
Right.
That.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, as always, we're out of time.
It just crazy.
And so we are thankful. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes.
Thank you for liking, sharing. Thank you for commenting.
There were comments up here. You guys are so far away.
We didn't get to see all of them.
I can't read it, but we love you.
Thank you again, everybody. We look forward to visiting with you next week.
Yes, on Monday Night Live.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.